Welcome to BenUp, where this indigenous Catholic uses his indigenous Igorot, American, and Catholic roots to navigate through life's messy waters. Today, I'm in New Orleans with Captain J, aka Captain J, my brother-in-law, the man, Johnny, and we are here at the graveyard where his father, Fred, God bless his soul, is buried here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about All Souls Day. I want to tell you a story about my parents. Back in '95, both my mother and father and my baby sister passed away in a car accident in Atlanta, Georgia. Since then, I've unceasingly been praying for them, been praying for their souls. The whole notion of praying for somebody's soul seems to be forgotten. So as much as I love my parents, and as much as I know how devout Catholics they were, I don't know the condition of their souls. I don't know whether or not they had any unconfessed sins. Number one, the accident had happened in where they most likely could not have prepared for it. So for them to have had the extreme unction, that was not the case. Had they had extreme unction, there would be much more hope that they would be in heaven. As a Catholic, I'm not going to be one of these who I constantly hear saying my loved one is in heaven. I don't want to talk derogatively to people who say that, only because they may not have been informed properly as to the church teachings of what happens to us after we die. And I'm not going to try to be an apologist over here. I'm not good in apologetics. So I'll put some links below here. Catholic Encyclopedia, which talks about purgatory and salvation. But I know this much though. My parents were very holy, religious. They tried. They were certainly not perfect. But every day I pray for them. Every day I do my best. Every Mass I include them in my prayers. These are things that we as Catholics need to remind ourselves about, is the souls of our loved ones. There are many priests and bishops and prelates today who are promoting and supporting an error that was brought into the world, which basically says, dare we hope that all men go to heaven. If you do your research, you'll see that it goes against Catholic teaching in Scripture. So I encourage people out there to pray for their loved ones and do everything you can. So I'm not a Catholic apologist, but I do listen to many of the good traditional ones, the sound ones. People like Dr. Taylor Marshall, people like Patrick Madrid, Patrick Coffin, and the list goes on. But I would refer to them more. But what I do know, if I had a white ball of clay right now, I would do this kind of demonstration. I'd take this white ball of clay, and then you'd have me a whole bunch of toothpicks. So you'd give me a whole bunch of toothpicks, and I'd stick all these toothpicks in there. So now that white ball of clay, I got to throw this in there. That white ball of clay has to have a little stain on it, because that's the original sin. So that white ball of clay is our soul, and every time we sin, we put all these little toothpicks into that little ball, right? Now, fortunately, Holy Mother Church, we have the sacrament of confession, and so when we go to confession, these toothpicks get removed. Okay, so let's just say, for example, if I had just gone to confession, all the toothpicks that I put in there this past week or month, or whatever, hopefully it's within a month that hopefully we're going to confession at least once a month. But let's just say when we do go to confession, we take all of these toothpicks out. What's left are these little holes in this little ball. So these little holes are the temporal sins. Now, as Catholics, these holes are filled through reparations and through indulgences. We've been given the gift of indulgences. Used the right way, these can help this. So when we die, though, how many of these holes are filled If we die and any of these holes, and many or any of these holes are still open, that's where purgatory cleans and fills these holes so that our souls are all white. And when that's all white and clear without holes, boom, we are in heaven. Okay, maybe that's too simple for you, but that's how I come to understand that. Wouldn't you agree with that example?
I like that.
You like that example? Captain J likes the example. So, you know, so that's why we need to do our best with reparations. A couple things in mind that we can do here on Earth is every time we drive by a cemetery. I've made it a habit in this last couple of years. Every time I drive by a cemetery, I make the sign of the cross, which is a prayer in itself. And if I can, I'll say an eternal rest prayer as I pass by, a requiem aeternam prayer. So that's another way. When we go to Mass, we offer our Masses for the departed souls, for them to purgatory. What other ways can you think of?
You can go fishing.
We can go fishing. And I laugh, but that is true, because you know what? When I go fishing, if you watch the BenUp episode where we went fishing last, I talked to you about spiritual contract. And so every time I casted, it was a spiritual contract where a requiem aeternam prayer was said to all the souls in purgatory, especially those that I pray for. So that you can do that. If you have a missal, in my missal, on the back of my missal, there's a whole list of all the names. One day I just started writing on all these people, starting with my mother, my father, my baby sister, my Lolas, my grandparents, and then the list started piling up. And then every time I run into somebody, meet somebody, and I encounter somebody that passed away, I ask permission, can I pray for their soul? And they say yes. You know, in fact, one of the best places to get charred grilled oysters here in New Orleans is at Drago's. A couple years ago when I went there with our families, I learned that the founder, Mr. Drago, had passed away. And I said my condolences to his wife, Claire, a wonderful lady. And I learned that they were Catholic, and I told her I'd pray for her. And I asked her, is it okay if I include him in my list? On my missal, and I'll offer every Mass, and his intention will be there. And she was delighted. So, what else? Any other way we can do it, but the bottom line is we need to be thinking about the souls of our loved ones. We need, you know, those who passed away. We just can't forget them. They just don't disappear. You know, like some people in the church are now starting to suggest that souls kind of like vaporize or disappear. No. When we die, there's either hell or heaven. If we die in the state of grace, boom, heaven. If we got a bunch of these holes in our souls, we're still going to heaven. But it might take a little bit through purgatory, through the church suffering. So while we're here alive on earth as a church militant, we need to think about those in purgatory, the church suffering, so that hopefully help them one day to get to the church triumphant, to heaven. So let's do that.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. So until next time, engage in life's spiritual battles, make a Catholic difference. In other words, BenUp, right?
Who dat?
Who dat?